And now, the First Alert Storm Team, live from the 13 Now digital desk. This is Tropic Topics, sponsored by Peden Heating and Air Conditioning and Mariana Toyota.
A good Wednesday afternoon. I'm Chief Meteorologist Ross Whitley, and I'd like to be a little jovial, but I think all of us have the same feeling at this point in time watching that storm hitting down around Naples, the Cape Coral area, and certainly what we're witnessing down there, certainly bringing back memories of what we had to go through, 4 years ago. So yeah, it's a little hard to watch for sure, and it makes you feel guilty with just about how nice it is outside here. We do have our own issues. We do have a tropical storm warning through the coastal Franklin County. It's just for wind. We're not going to see any rain across our area. It's just for wind. So through that area is the only real location that we could see the 20 to 30 mile per hour winds and then gust up to 50. And we'll talk more about that in just a second. And as well, along with that, we do have tropical storm warnings that extend offshore. So that's for boaters mostly. And then we also have a fire warning across a good portion of our area and a wind advisory off to our west. And you might be like, well, why is it off to the west and not off to the east? Because well, we got Ian to our south and east. It's actually because the wind we're getting, not really related to Ian. It is kind of directly related, but it's not really from Ian's wind field. What we're getting is the pressure gradient between the high pressure ridge that's building in that kept Ian away from us and Ian itself. So the pressure gradient force between the two, that's why it's so breezy here. In fact, if you removed Ian, it wouldn't be nearly as breezy because you just wouldn't have that pressure gradient force. It would still be breezy, but it wouldn't be what we're seeing now. But we'd still have that wind, which is why the wind advisory is further off to the west, because that's where the high pressure is building in from. So that's where the gradient force is greater. So that is what we're dealing with here. And again, no rain across our area. The next 3 days are going to be completely dry. It may, in fact, be dry all the way to Jefferson County, maybe even like Perry and Madison. They may not get a rain droplet either. A little closer to the edge of the rain shield there, but there's a lot of dry air out there, which is why we do have that fire warning. So I mentioned yesterday on air a lot. Do not burn. Do not burn. We don't want a fire across our area. We don't want a wildfire. We don't want any of that kind of stuff. That means no outdoor burning of any kind. No trash. If you want to grill or whatever, maybe do it 3 days from now. I would say a grill is probably fine, but let's just all be smart. Let's not start any fires by accident because we wanted to grill something, or burn some trash or whatever. Just don't burn. It's breezy. It's dry. We don't need any wildfires. So that's where we're going to start. And again, if you got any questions, comments, concerns, just like the last 3 days, you can put them in the comment section. We found out yesterday during Kristen's Tropic Topic that you can comment on any of the lives and it will all show up on one chat. So we're getting it all into all of the chats, so we don't really even need to monitor all three of them anymore, or all four of them as it is. All we got to do is look at the chat. So regardless, we do have all of them up just in case, but they do go to every single section of the chats there. So no matter where you're watching, if you're watching on Facebook Live, just go ahead and throw those comments in there. Any questions, comments, concerns. We're going to get into the nitty gritty of the storm as well. And again, very minimal impacts across the Panhandle. We're not expecting anything worse than what we're getting today. We're going to see actually very similar conditions today as we will tomorrow and Friday. And then Saturday may, in fact, actually be one of the cloudier days just because we're going to have more of a return flow. So we'll see a little more moisture try to work back in. I still don't think we're going to see any kind of rain on Saturday, but certainly we're going to see that relative humidity up a little bit as well. So that's what we got. That's where we're going to start. Again, questions, comments, concerns. If you don't have our apps yet for the last 3 days, shame on you, because we put out great content and information on our 13 Now app as well as the Storm Track 13 app. And I actually posted stuff on my social media off the Storm Track 13 app today. I was using this graphic right here, and I posted it off of the Storm Track 13 app. So that it was just a screenshot off of our app, and that's how it got posted to social. So it's very, very useful, and we use it a lot. I mean, a lot. It is a good app. So go ahead and download that. It's the Storm Track 13 app. It's in the bottom left-hand corner, or it rotates around in the bottom left-hand corner. You'll be able to see it pop up there for that in our 13 Now app, which rotates around in the bottom right-hand corner. So the corners, the bottom showing up quite nicely. So let's get right into this, and we'll go forward here. We're going to start off with what the storm is doing and where the storm is going, and I think I may have my map in creation mode. So let's see if I do. No, I don't. Why isn't it going forward? Let's go for it. Hey, there we go. Look at that. Magic. All right. So what we got going on here is Ian is now a 150 mile per hour Category 4 storm. It was 155 earlier, which is right on the cusp of a Category 5. It's actually 145, so they just came in slightly weaker, and it needed about 8 more hours over the water. That's what we needed, and unfortunately, this harder turn that we got here, and you can see it. You can see the harder turn. With that harder turn, unfortunately, we didn't have that 8 extra hours because the dry air is wrapping in. You can notice the dry air right here on the backside, and then there's dry air on the other side as well. So that dry air is wrapping into the system, and if we had had just 8 more hours, we would have had this peak over the water and then weaken as it was moving inland instead of being very near peak intensity going into landfall. So a lot of what you're going to see a video, I think. Can we play that now? You want to play the video now? Let's do Nick Underwood's. Yeah, well, you're going to see a video where this is Nick Underwood. We actually interviewed him last year on Tropic Topics, talking about all kinds of interesting things. He is a hurricane hunter, and this is from one of the flights flying on through Hurricane Ian, and he posted out saying, this is one of the worst flights he's ever been on. And if you look out the window there, you'll see lightning flashes going almost continuously. And he's actually got it pointed out the window, and there's lightning flashes that are ongoing. And that happens in the eye wall. And what I think really why we had so much lightning in the eye wall here was because we were getting that dry air interaction, and dry air is CAPE when we're talking about instability. So I think we were getting a lot of dry air ingestion here, and we were adding friction with that drier air, which is why we had so much lightning in the eye wall. But you could see just how rough that flight was. He even commented on Twitter that this was one of the worst he'd ever flown through, and that he was happy they only made one pass through the eye wall. That's quite a statement from a hurricane hunter. I mean, they're pretty used to these kinds of conditions and these kinds of flights. So pretty intense video from the hurricane hunters there. Underwood did tell us last year in the interview that he was not on the flights that flew through Michael. So saying that's one of the worst he's ever been in, is he also didn't go through Michael, but it's still a powerful statement. So the lightning flashes are pretty crazy and pretty impressive. So there is Ian now, and it is continuing on its east-northeast track. It's going to continue about the same speed and pace that it's moving now at about 8 to 9 miles per hour off to the east-northeast for the next several days, which means that on the northwest side, basically what we're talking about is probably a peak rainfall through this area, right where I circled. So that is on the northwest side of that circulation. That is where we're going to continue to wrap moisture in from the Atlantic. The frontal boundary, which is now situated about here, that is going to continue to add convergence to that northwest side, and we're just going to see tremendous rainfall rates and rain falling across that area. So that does include like Gainesville and Orlando, and of course we've got north-south highways all through this area too. So all of those locations are also going to be seeing a lot of flooding issues as that does continue off into that direction. Again, this does look like, and it should relatively rapidly lessen its wind. I don't want to say it's really weakening because this is still going to be a very impactful storm, but we should see the wind really fall off around the core over the next 6 to 8 hours, A, because of land interaction, and B, because of the dry air that it is wrapping into the core. So we're going to see this fall apart pretty quickly as it does move in that direction, but it is going to turn into more of a severe threat, especially we've had the severe threat already in place across this area. That's going to continue. You notice the bandings here. You can actually pick out the dry air quite nicely, and I'm going to change the color so that you can pick that out. So you can see the dry air wrapping in. And you can see it wrapping into the western side here too. That is basically a dry slot. So this is turning into more of what you would refer to as a synoptic low, as that dry air does wrap in and have that comma type of pattern to it, as opposed to a tropical low. But it is still very, very much a tropical. It's very warm core, very tropical. I don't misinterpret what I'm saying here. I'm just saying that this is going to have kind of a transition as it goes through the next a day or so because of what it is doing, wrapping in that drier air. So zooming into our area, obviously the rain shield, you can kind of see it. It's right there on the edge of the screen. It's over here. It's actually right behind me now, but that's the rain shield. It's probably going to try to push, I would say, the Perry area up to Valdosta. That might be the extent of the overall rain shield, maybe into that area right there. That might be about as far west as it makes it, which means that Tallahassee off to the west, probably very little rainfall. The National Weather Service, rightfully, I don't want to trash them at all. That's not what I'm doing here. They've been very slow to erode the western edge of their projected rainfall. In fact, this morning they still had an estimate of a quarter to a half an inch of rainfall in Panama City. That's not going to happen. Same thing in Tallahassee. They still this morning had an inch and a half of rain, potentially up to 2.5 inches. That's not going to happen either. It's very likely that basically from the bend off to the west that we don't see really any rain at all. So a dry system, but do notice here, if there's something to notice, is that the wind out of the east and northeast, well, that's right across Appalachia Bay, which is why we do have that tropical for our coastal areas of Franklin County, is because there's no friction. So they're the ones that are going to see the highest wind gust here with the winds, and that's all they're talking about is winds. They're not highlighting any kind of rain or anything like that. It's just wind. So tropical storm warnings are for just wind. That's it. So that's all we're seeing across our area. Same kind of thing on our forecast going forward, that we're still not projecting much in the way of rainfall. So that brings in a high fire danger, and that we do have a fire weather warning in place. Where you're seeing the oranges and the reds, that corresponds to the legend in the top left-hand corner of the screen, where we do have that showing a very high fire danger. That's going to continue. So that's our relative humidity value. So a lot of people misinterpret relative humidity, and they think that when they step outside and they're feeling how sticky it is, they think that has to do with the relative humidity. It actually doesn't. That has to do with the dew point. Relative humidity, if you think about the column of air as a glass of water, relative humidity tells you how full that glass of water is of water. So 32 degrees and a 32-degree dew point, that glass of water is completely full. The column is completely saturated, but you wouldn't step outside at freezing and say it's humid. So that has to do with the dew point. That's how much water or how big the glass can actually be. That's what we're talking about when we say it's humid outside. We're actually referring to how high the dew points are, because the column of air is actually holding more water. So that's what you feel. In this case, relative humidity values actually correspond to how dry it is outside, or how full that column is. So whenever you have dry conditions or low relative humidity values and you have gusty winds, guess what? Fuels ignite quickly and spread quickly thanks to the wind and the dry conditions. So you can see why the fire danger is there. This goes through tomorrow morning, which is also why I'm saying just don't burn. Just don't burn anything outside. We're going to see 30 to 40% relative humidity values, which is in that medium range of fire danger. And then that continues with the wind. Check out the wind. These are gusts here, 20, 25 miles per hour all across the area with low relative humidity values. So you can imagine if a fire got going, it would be extremely hard to put out, and it would spread very, very rapidly. So let's not burn. Let's not do anything. Let's be smart about it. And let's just be smart across our area. As we get into tomorrow afternoon, the fire danger kind of shifts to our west a little bit. That's because we do start to get some of the moisture, at least in the atmosphere, wrapping around Ian. That's going to be pressing into our area, so our relative humidity values will be a little bit higher going through tomorrow night. and then into Friday morning. And then that continues. This is why I say we could see some cloud cover as we get into Friday and Saturday, because you see the green showing up there near Albany. That's obviously very high humidity values or relative humidity values. So that's why some cloud cover could sneak in. But across the western half of the peninsula, or rather Panhandle, we're talking about very dry conditions persisting through Friday, and the gusts staying around 20, 25 miles per hour all across the area. So we're going to continue with the very breezy or gusty conditions well through the day on Friday. Basically what we had today, that's what we're going to continue to see. So here is the latest, zooming all the way in on Major Hurricane Ian making landfall as a very strong Category 4. It's really going over the Captiva Islands and then into basically Cape Coral, North Fort Myers, Port Charlotte area. The northern eye wall really is where we're seeing the most intensity here on that northwest side. That's where we do have that convergence. And if you think back, you actually need precipitation to pull those winds down to the surface. So while you're probably still seeing some really extreme wind gusts, especially in the eye wall on this side, the winds are probably mixing down the best through the Port Charlotte area, going up into Venice, that area. That's probably where you're seeing the strongest winds actually mixing down to the surface, just thanks to the fact that that eye wall is intact on that northern side. So it really just depends on moisture sometimes onto what that. And yeah, let's roll the video from Fort Myers. Go ahead. So this is a video going from Fort Myers showing the storm surge coming in as well. You can see the winds just whipping across a scene that we're very familiar with the palm trees swaying in the wind and basically like whiteout type of conditions with that wind just going sideways. So extreme conditions. It's going to be very, very devastating to that area. The aftermath and the cleanup of having to deal with basically all of the storm surge and the wind from what you're seeing here. So definitely scenes of a strong hurricane, and unfortunately this is a slow moving one as well. So lots and lots of flooding on that northern side as well. So that was video down from down here. I actually think it might be slightly off the map, right? So that was just off to the south of what the map is showing here. But you can see intersection with land is happening. So I'm willing to bet that official landfall will be somewhere between 2:30 and 3:15. That's probably where they'll do that Central Time, 2:30 and 3:15 Central Time. That's likely what they're going to be. They're going to be official for that landfall. Zooming out here, you can kind of get a better idea of where the storm is in reference to our area. The visible satellite showing up too. You can see how that wind shear is starting to erode on the western side and how the drier air has wrapped in. So I told you that the drier air, we needed 8 more hours because you can see the dry slot showing up right there. That is that drier air wrapping into the system. It's actually now extending up into that area too, which is why the heavy rainfall threat that we're most concerned about is right through there. That's where the convergence is not going anywhere, and the storm itself is going to continue to track off to the east and northeast. So the storm is going to continue to track like that. So that's going to stack up rain all through this area, and that is going to be the next significant threat. Is the wind speeds are going to be coming down, so the wind is going to be lessening and lessening as it does go inland. So there'll be less and less worry about potential wind damage. It's going to turn into more of a flooding event from Tampa to Orlando, possibly all the way up into the Jacksonville area as this does continue to go in that direction, and then eventually make the turn. So again, we could see some pretty impressive rainfall amounts up into southeast Georgia as well, along the coast there, and eventually this working into the Carolinas too. So they'll be dealing with these issues as well as they go in. Main issues there are probably going to be severe threat with thunderstorms and the possibility of tornadoes, and then on top of that, the flooding threat, as rainfall amounts through the Carolinas are probably going to be in the 4 to 6 range on the higher end, possibly higher than that. Might see some locations 6 to 8 inches of rain, which will certainly lead to flooding. But on our side of the system, this is why I'm saying no rain really through here. So further off to the west of that, that's probably where we're going to see the rain. Dry air already chipping away at the west side. It's moving away from us, going to make that turn. So I can't really see rain making it any further to the west than that. So dry conditions. Yeah, go ahead. Pictures from Apalachicola. Pull them up. Let's go. Oh yeah, this is the wind being pulling the water out. Yeah, pretty impressive. I was hoping to get the tower cam. We actually have the tower cam back up, but I haven't been able to get it to work with links just yet. So I'm not going to be able to show that to you. But you could actually see in the bays out here, St. Andrews Bay, the wind pushing the water out, and that's leading to this kind of condition. So that north wind is strong enough and consistent enough that it's actually pulling the water away from the shore. So it's a reverse surge. And in these shallow bays, it's an impressive reverse surge. It doesn't mean that you're going to get a sudden rise, because it's going to be the wind will lessen and the water will slowly come back. We're not going to see the wind shift to the south and we'll see, storm surge. That's not going to happen. It's actually a reverse surge. So we're seeing the water going down instead of going up. So it should come back, and it'll come back slowly. It's not going to be just a massive surge. We're not talking about any kind of like tsunami or anything like that. So yeah, this is Tampa, showing the water being pulled out of Tampa Bay there, and St. Pete as well. So much stronger reverse surge there with that east wind on the northern end of that circulation. So just a couple of days ago, projections that were through that area, they were going to see 5 to 8, maybe 10 or 12 feet of storm surge, but that was with the circulation basically doing that. And instead, we had it make that much harder turn, which I tried to highlight throughout this week, or this past 4 or 5 days, that a harder turn seemed more likely, in my opinion, and that if we had that, we wouldn't have that shear and dry air get into the system, and that we would have a much stronger landfalling system. And unfortunately, that did verify. So very unfortunate that that forecast ended up being correct. Would have been much happier had it been a little further off to the north and a lot weaker. It would have been much better. Of course, Tampa's probably happy that it's much further off to the south and they're not dealing with that kind of storm surge. So no real winners here when you're talking about a major hurricane making landfall really across anywhere, because it affects all of us. So no real winners to this kind of situation. And it's kind of harps back to, even when we're having a quiet season, it only takes one. That's it. And this appears to be that one for the season that is really going to make an impact. Hopefully, we're not talking about any other kind of tropical systems as we go through the rest of this year, but just have to wait and see. Hurricane season doesn't end until the end of November, so still time for other stuff to develop. But hopefully this is it for the U.S. We don't have to deal with this again. So, yeah, I will go through some questions as well as we're going along here. I don't have a ton of stuff to cover just because we're doing analysis of the storm in our area. We're really dealing with what I've already shown, which is that fire danger and issues with the wind. That's really what we're talking about. Any idea? I do see any idea on category: Orlando, landfall in Jacksonville. Orlando, Jacksonville, all that area, it's going to be rainfall. That's really what we're most concerned about as this does move inland. The wind is impressive, and certainly this is our current estimates based off of satellite. So you can see that the pressure gradient force here showing that winds extending through our area and even back off to New Orleans. But what was coming from Ian itself is actually here. So that's actually the wind field around Ian. What we're getting is the gradient force, the pressure between the high pressure building off to our north and west and Ian itself off to our south and east. And that gradient is what causes the wind. That pressure change is what's causing the wind. So that's why we have so much wind. We're not actually getting the wind field from Ian. We're getting the wind from the differences in pressure from that high and the low off to our south and east, which is why our wind's not going to go anywhere over the next couple of days, because that gradient doesn't change. Even as Ian weakens, the high is going to be getting closer to us, so the gradient stays about the same. So we should see similar wind conditions for our Thursday and our Friday that we had today. So that will continue as we do go forward. So good question there on that, but it is going to be the rainfall that we're going to be most concerned with. Let's go to the latest track here for Ian as it does move inland. This is the National Hurricane Center's track. You notice that it is east. Once again, the continued trend, it is east of forecast track. I doubt it takes that hard north turn. We're probably going to see it go east-northeast or north-northeast over the next several days. So this is Wednesday at 7 p.m. You see that right there. And then this is Thursday at 7 p.m. So in that 24-hour period, it's only going to be moving across the peninsula, which is why we're going to see so much rain. But you'll also notice that the wind speeds here dramatically drop. So by the time we get to Thursday at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, this will be a tropical storm. So it won't be a hurricane. So those that are concerned about inland winds, it's going to be doing sporadic damage as it moves inland, but we're going to see the winds rapidly lessen and the wind field broaden as it does weaken. And this is going to turn into more of a rain event, mainly on that northwest side of the circulation. So basically where I do have circled, that's where we are going to see the highest rainfall totals. And then as it crosses back into the Atlantic, there's a possibility that it does a little bit of re-strengthening here. I'm not expecting anything major, maybe re-strengthening back up to, say, a higher end tropical storm. So maybe 60, 65, possibly 70 miles per hour as it makes that secondary landfall somewhere in South Carolina or Georgia coast through there. And then as it goes up, it's going to be the northern and eastern side that we become worried about as it wraps that moisture in from the Atlantic, and the southwestern side is actually going to be the side that dries out. So it's going to do kind of the reverse as it moves inland, because it'll be wrapping that dry air around and kind of changing how it does that as the dynamics of the system change and where the moisture is coming from as well. So the interaction with the cold front will be gone by that point in time. So we'll actually see a flipping of where the precipitation shield is. So how about the rain and the rain projected? Let's get into that here as we do go into the next couple of days. We're going to continue to see, well, nothing. This is our projected rainfall totals, and you'll see right there on the edge of the map. Yeah, look at that. Oh, it does throw a shower or two. How generous of it. We could see, hey, a couple of raindrops. That would be quite a pleasant surprise to see a raindrop or two. That would most likely happen on Friday, but I wouldn't get too much of my hopes up, as rain chances are probably going to be around 20% at best. 1/100th of an inch, maybe a tenth of an inch, maybe a quarter of an inch across our area. Really not talking about any kind of major precipitation. I think this forecast that I put out yesterday probably holds pretty well. Spotty showers expected across the area. As far as rainfall totals go, I would be surprised to see someone make it to a half an inch or greater as we get through our Thursday and our Friday. But the rest of the state not going to be so lucky. As we zoom on out here and you can see the rainfall totals, the projection of where the rain is going to fall from this point forward. So we've already had a lot of rain in places like Tampa and Bradenton, but projection of where the heaviest of rain is going to fall, it's right there on that east-west highway extending up into Orlando and then going up and then through the First Coast and the Space Coast. It's probably where we're going to see the highest rainfall totals from this point forward. So this is going to turn into more of a flooding event as it does make that transition. And the dry slot, the drier air showing up quite nicely. Convective banding still will be able to produce tornadoes through that area. So not quite done with it yet, as this does make that movement off to the east and northeast as that system continues to work across. But the rainfall is going to be right there on that northern and northwestern side. That's where we're going to see the heaviest rainfall total. So I think that flooding is going to become a major issue across the peninsula over the next day and a half as this does traverse the state and eventually work into the Atlantic. I think that's going to be the major concern from this point forward. How about wind speeds? Again, I don't really foresee any kind of changes as far as what we had today. We're probably going to continue to see very similar conditions again for the day tomorrow, tonight, and then through the day on Friday. You see, this is probably maximum winds. So these are the sustains. It's been breezy today. Don't get me wrong. Anything under 30 miles per hour is not, in my opinion, a windy conditions. We're talking about breezy conditions. So we've got 15 to 25 miles per hour across the area as there's sustained winds, and then gusts as high as 30, potentially as high as 40 across the area. Certainly down here where we do have that tropical storm warning along the Franklin County coastline, you can see that brighter color showing up there, and that is highlighting the potential for those stronger wind speeds consistently, as well as the stronger wind gusts. That's where they're going to be the highest, is right along the coast. And that continues through our Friday as well, very similar. So basically what we had today, we're going to see a repeat of that for Thursday, and then again another repeat of that on Friday before things really start to settle down as we get into Saturday. So we'll be back to basically normal wind speeds and normal conditions by Saturday, and then by Sunday we'll probably be nice and calm because high pressure will settle in. So Continuing with that 15 to 25 miles per hour across the area is what we're having today. Gusts as high as 40 are possible right there along the Franklin County coast. 20 to 30 for those sustained winds with gusts as high as 50. So really haven't made a whole lot of modifications to the wind forecast. And overall, we're talking about the same kind of impacts across our area that we've been talking about for the last several days, which is dangerous beach and boating conditions. Certainly pay attention to the flags if you're headed out to the beach, especially since we have kids off from school in some locations today, kids off from school in some locations tomorrow. So you might take advantage of the fact that it's going to be dry and relatively nice out there and go to the beach. But make sure you are staying safe if you do take advantage of that and head out to the beach. Just maybe staying out of the water because we are going to have a high rip current risk. But other than that, that's exactly what we got. So we'll get to questions now, and then we'll wrap things up. I think this may be my quickest Tropic Topics of the week. We'll see how the rest of this goes. But there we go. Let's get into it. See a lot of questions about Orlando. What you got? One? Any other tropical systems on the horizon? Well, at the current moment, we only have one other area of interest at this point in time out in the Atlantic. Not super concerned about that. We haven't seen any of the long-range models producing any kind of tropical activity in the near term. So that's the next 5 to 7 days. Beyond that, we might see something, but overall the Atlantic looks relatively quiet over the short-term period and really even into the long-term period, the next 10 to 14 days. But certainly we'll keep you apprised if anything does change there and the ability, and if the forecast changes there, as well as anything else that we may be worried about. See a lot of questions about cell service. So cell service. Sorry, I'm reading a question. See someone saying, please answer. I'm not exactly sure where the Bronson area is. Trying to zoom into that comment. I'm not real sure about that area specifically. And I do see a question about, do you think it'll be reclassified as a Category 5? That's a good question. So let's, I'm going to bring this back up. Let's get rid of the whiteboard here and go into that. And we're going to go back to the storm itself and highlight that. So when we get the updates on what the storm is doing and what the storm classification is, those drop zones that they're dropping in, they have about a plus or minus of about 8 knots, roughly corresponding to about 10 miles per hour as far as wind speeds go. So it's possible as they go back and do post-analysis of all the data, they may bump it up, like the case where we had Michael, where it came ashore technically as a Category 4, and then in post they said, well, actually the data here does suggest that it was stronger than that based off of that data, and then based off of observation of damage. They did it in post, they moved it up. They said, okay, well, the correction was that it needed to be stronger than the wind speeds we had suggested here. So it's possible that they go in either direction. We saw with Laura, I think it was 2 years ago, into Louisiana, it technically made landfall as a high-end Category 4 at 150 miles per hour. Well, in post, they actually went back and said 140 miles per hour, so they went down on the post as it was making landfall. So it can go in either direction. It being so close to a Category 5 at peak intensity at 155, that's 2 miles per hour off. That's certainly in the range of error. It's also certainly in the semantic range. Who cares? 2 miles per hour. It's 2 miles per hour. The differences between 157 and 155 are none. There's no difference there as far as the impacts go. So it is really going to boil down to semantics of the classification and then exactly what they get out of the data. So good question there as well. And then what else? You see something else, Spencer? Okay. I'm not real. Do you know where the Bronson area is? I'm not real familiar with the Bronson area. I see tropical storm conditions. I don't think Bronson is in our area, is it? I'm not real sure exactly. Is that it's by Gainesville? Okay. So yeah, I mean tropical storm conditions, I would say, are seem likely into that area. Gainesville and Orlando tropical storm conditions, probably strong tropical storm conditions too. 50, 60 mile per hour winds are certainly possible. Gusts could be higher than that as well, and then lots and lots of rain. So this turns into more of a rain event. It will turn into more of a basically what we had across the Panhandle last year with Fred. That's probably what they're going to be expecting in Orlando up to Jacksonville is going to be the heavy rainfall and the flooding potential as rain is just going to continue to stack up over the next 12 to 14 hours or so as that does continue in. So I hope that answered the question there for that. As well. And then I see Lakeland, Naples, all of that kind of stuff. I think we covered that already when we were moving in. Lakeland, probably not going to see much. Some rain and definitely tropical storm force winds, but that's about it. So we're just talking about breezy conditions basically from the bend further off to the west. And that's mainly our main issue is going to be fire danger over the next couple of days is just don't burn anything outside. We don't want to go from tropical coverage to wildfire coverage. Please, please, please don't do that. We've already done severe weather to wildfire coverage earlier this year. I don't want to do it again. So don't light anything on fire, mainly for the mental health and safety of everyone, but also the mental health of me as well. I don't know if I could take that. So please, please, please do not burn anything across the Panhandle over the coming days. What I see a couple other comments here. About travel and that kind of stuff. I would stay away from traveling into the peninsula until probably at earliest maybe Tuesday of next week, maybe Monday and Tuesday. You can get in there. You just want to have time. If you've evacuated, you want to give time to first responders to get in there and assess the situation, figure out what is safe, what's not, set up basically a station to station basis of where they can set up food and water, where they can set up information. So you want to give them time to get in there and assess the situation before you get in their way. That's never a good idea. You don't want to get in the way of the individuals trying to come in and help. So let them do their thing and then go back when it's a little bit safer. So I would wait until at earliest the beginning of next week, say Monday or Tuesday is when I would think, okay, the cell service may start to be coming back depending on how the power grid and stuff handles, especially down into the Cape Coral, Naples, Fort Myers area. I would certainly wait maybe even a few more days. There's no point in going back if you don't have power. What are you going to start doing? Nothing that you can't do couple of days down the road, and you're certainly going to be much more comfortable in a hotel or with a family or friend who has power and has toiletries, to be honest, have a shower. All of those things are just, you forget how much of a luxury those things are until you don't have them anymore, and then you realize exactly how much of a luxury it is. Hot food, for example, just not being able to eat a hot meal for several days. So along with that, that's where we'll finish here, is that we had quite a few organizations in our area really come and help us out after Hurricane Michael. I think we're going to do a story tonight on Mercy Chefs and their preparations down there. They were great to us here at the news station, as they were really my only meal for about a week and a half after Michael, because we were just at the station all day and going out and doing stuff. So if you have an organization or something that you really, really enjoyed, that really, no, I'm saying enjoyed, but really helped you out, please consider donating to them over the coming days. Please consider, maybe if you can't donate, I know that financial times are tough on a lot of individuals right now. If you can't donate money, suggest volunteer your time. See if you can't volunteer to help them do something here locally. You may be able to help do something here locally and then help that organization as they do continue to move off into that direction. So however you can help, please consider doing that, because this is going to be catastrophic to the area where it is being affected right now. They're going to have significant damage from storm surge, from flooding, from the wind itself. So the areas that are being impacted, they're going to need the help. So if you can help, please do on that situation. And, I would say pick the organization that helped you out. I think that's fair, kind of pay that back. So just consider that as we go through the coming days as well. So that's where we're going to wrap it up. I don't see any other questions on that. So we're going to wrap it up right there. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns that I didn't get to, make sure you go back and watch the video to see if I did address those questions. And if I still didn't address those questions, you can throw them into the comments section as well, and I will try to go back through them and get them. We're going to continue to update on the storm over the next couple of days. We're going to do updates like we've been doing on the website, so you can continue to find that at that time. The next 2 updates are going to be at 7 o'clock after the 6 o'clock news, and then we'll have another update at 10. We are going to stop doing the Tropic Topics because we don't have anything into our area. So the next Tropic Topic discussion, Kristen will have one tomorrow, and that's going to be the last one this week. So that'll be it. She's probably just going to be talking about kind of a synopsis of the storm as it has moved inland at that point in time, and then what's going on across the state. But by the time we get into Friday, this will be working into the Atlantic and then up into South Carolina and North Carolina, so obviously away from our state. So we're going to wrap up our coverage of this storm. But make sure you do continue to check mypanhandle.com, and if you don't have the Storm Track 13 app, download it just in case. We do have hurricane season still ongoing. It's still possible that we have to deal with one this season. Hopefully we do not, especially across the Panhandle here. We don't want one, but if we do, you're going to want those resources. So make sure you are continuing to check back. And if you're not following me on social, I post a ton. I think that whatever I am posting is my honest opinions. I'm not holding anything back from the public. My forecast on air are the forecast I believe is going to happen. There's no lying about anything. It's complete and total honesty of my opinion. I'm going to occasionally be wrong. It's going to happen. It's part of forecasting. My job is not to tell you exactly what's going to happen. My job is to tell you what's most likely to happen. And I think we do a pretty good job of that here at News 13. So, follow me on social, follow Kristen, follow Grace. We all 3 of us, in my opinion, do a pretty good job of informing the public of our area and really what is going on around the area as well. Again, mypanhandle.com, Storm Track 13 app, 13 Now app, all great resources. That's going to do it. Kristen will see you tomorrow morning.
Thank you for watching Tropic Topics, sponsored by Peden Heating and Air Conditioning and Marietta Toyota. Be sure to download the Storm Track 13 app today to stay up to date with all of the latest weather information. For more local news, weather, sports, and more, visit mypanhandle.com.